This is Ryan. On with me is, like always, Andrew, and Robert's coming on in just a little bit. We have an awesome show tonight. We actually have a celebrity guest, Jim Vieira. Anyone there?
Hey, Ryan. It's Robert. We had a technical difficulty.
Up,
Everybody is currently muted. That's why. The console messed up. So I'm going to unmute everybody right now. Welcome back, everybody.
Okay.
Once again, it's Robert.
Muted.
Ryan?
All right. You can hear me now?
All right, everybody. Hello. Something broke. We fixed it.
Guys? Wow, Blog Talk has been messing up. We had that issue last week and having some issues, but they should be fixing it here soon. Interesting week.
I was subjected to some real weak-ass death metal for a couple minutes there.
Yeah. I was not sure what was going on there for a minute.
Well, usually on the Debunker Boys, we usually cover Bigfoot, ghosts, UFOs, and stuff. But this week we got something new for us. We're talking about giants, lost giants. And on with us is James Vieira. Am I saying that right?
Yes, Vieira. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. James is a renowned author and the host of the show Search of Lost Giants on the History Channel. First off, James, how did you what got you interested in in giants, looking for giants and stuff like that?
Honestly, it just happened organically. I'm a stonemason by trade. I studied economics at the University of Massachusetts. I minored in Japanese, so I had an academic background, and I like to do research and kind of a voracious reader with a curious mind. And I was studying Native American stonework in North America and focusing on the eastern half of the country. And I started to really, to realize the extent that Native tribes built with stone and their incredible, like the mound builders, these earthen pyramids and geometric forms they built. But I was very interested in New England because we have lots of anomalous stonework in New England, and there's a raging debate over who built it, whether it was early colonial work or Native American. Some other people have different theories, but there's not a lot of archaeological evidence to point to like Celts or other people coming over. But that's a different matter. So I would just spend a lot of time reading through historical documents, looking for accounts of pre-existing stonework when the colonists showed up. And sure enough, there was quite a few accounts that the colonists made, reporting essentially this stonework that existed. And it was pretty elaborate, actually, and all around the eastern half of the country, like 55-foot stone pyramid, essentially, or stone mound with a 182-foot base was in Licking County, Ohio, that was taken apart to build a dam. And as I was just reading through, I started to find these bizarre accounts of enormous skeletons being unearthed in the town and county histories around where I live. And then the more I read, the more I would find not only just 7 and 8 and taller foot skeletons reportedly unearthed, but these other kind of strange things like the jawbone being fit over the largest man in town, and the skeleton was on display. This skeleton had double rows of teeth, and it just got me really intrigued. And then I don't want to be long-winded, but I basically started researching and writing and presenting. I was naive. I'm kind of a Luddite. I'm not really into technology too much, and I just assumed that I would share these neat findings, like, hey, do you know what's buried in like every freaking historical document you can imagine? These strange accounts of skeletons. And I did a TEDx talk. Actually, it was the number one watched TEDx video in the world, and it was funny. The guy before me was Dean Sykoon from Dean's Beans, and he did this kind of anti-corporate, not anti-corporate, just explaining why. So he's a CEO himself of a progressive company, and he talks about why sociopaths, how they behave, how they run corporations. So I got a hair across my ass, and the end of my talk, I was like shitting on the Smithsonian, teaming up with it really had nothing to do with giants. It was more teaming up with the Koch brothers to subvert scientific truth, essentially, and deny climate change and things like that. So anyways, the moral of the story is that then all kinds of people are dumping on me, giants, you're an idiot, it's unicorns and fairies. And I was just trying to share this information. So, of course, I got pissed.
When they talk about giants, what classifies as a giant? Because just about every mythology throughout written history, has some sort of story about a large man, and stuff like that. A lot of you go through a lot of mythology, and they talk about hairy beasts and stuff like that. So, what actually qualifies a giant? Because when back in early recorded history, man was short. A tall man was about 5'5". So are we talking like 7 foot, 8 foot?
Well, the accounts we've compiled are essentially 7 foot and taller, and this whole controversial subject. It's a landmine, or it's a minefield, I should say. And I had no idea that there are people who are religiously oriented. There's all kinds of, like any of these subjects. There's so much controversy and bitterness, and I'm basically just trying to do some detective work and figure out there's some legitimacy to the story. And I certainly don't think the Earth is 4,000 years old, or I'm not anti-scientific in any way. It's more, I guess what I'm pointing to is, in order to be what we're talking about, it's 7 foot and taller, but like this proportional, massive kind of skeletal structure that's been identified with a massive jaw, massive skull. And there are two different stories, but the Native American story is one of a royal class of giants, 7 foot and taller, sometimes over 8 foot tall, that were often reported by the early explorers. Every early explorer you can name, and this isn't the Spanish were 5'4" and the Native Americans were 5'9". This is like tribal chiefs listed as like Tuscaloosa in Alabama, 7.5, 8 foot tall. And the native story is that basically there was a pre-Ice Age civilization that sank, like in Atlantis, if you will, and the tall ones were basically became part of native civilization, and they had a bloodline that carried through to the contact period. That's the Native American story. And they also speak of kind of a malevolent race of like cannibalistic giants, which is kind of out of left field. For me, there has to be some anthropological evidence to support these things. And
that's where the stories of like Jack and the Beanstalk come out, where the giants were eating people.
I know, it sounds like a freak show, but if you all around the planet, it's kind of the same. It's little people and giants are reported by the indigenous people, who have a really pretty tight oral history that predicts or explains the geological record very well. And I'll quickly say, in 2003, they found the hobbits in Florensis in Indonesia. So these 3.5 tall hominids are found on this island in Indonesia, and the local people in Indonesia have this legend of the Ibu Gogo, who are the little people. And the hobbits lived roughly from 120,000 years ago to 12,000 years ago, and there was some extinction event, is the thought now, that wiped them out and all the megafauna in the United States. That, I don't believe that the mammoths and the mastodons were hunted out of extinction. I think it was more like a cometary impact and a worldwide flood. But, so, I'm looking at some, could it be the Denisovans in the cave in Siberia that mated with modern humans and Neanderthals 50, 60,000 years ago? There has to be an anthropological link. So I'm essentially asking questions and theoretically potentially talking about humans that are absolutely out of normal range and are not do not possess a disease condition like acromegaly or pituitary gigantism.
Yeah. Now, do you do a lot of it sounds to me like you do a lot more historical research rather than archaeological excavation. Have you been a part of any of these archaeological excavations where you're actually digging up these skeletons?
Well, you can't. It's illegal because of NAGPRA law, Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, passed in 1990, to basically unearth skeletal remains. I've been on archaeological digs. We had a couple, and we just did a show on the Lost Colony of Roanoke, and we found actually a massive native site, but it's a midden pile, and we wouldn't, there's moral and ethical implications around this, and I'm not a trained archaeologist. I'm rather like a antiquarian, a historical detective. So I'm basically trying to make a case for further examination or further exploration. Really, when I first this whole thing is it's really taught me about human psychology. Like when I first got involved, I was just, like I said, sharing what I thought was pretty interesting information. And then I get this huge backlash, like personal insults, and I'm like, what does it have to do with science? Like I'm not even drawing a scientific conclusion. I'm just like presenting historical documents that are very compelling, or at least I thought so. And then I kind of got on the defensive, like, I have to prove this case, but really what I need, and then I shifted to the center. It's just like, no, like I have to just make the case that it's worthy of further investigation, or at least to myself. So I've fallen back in the middle where I understand, like the skeptic actually is just like, you would say maybe I'm on the alternative side of the ledger, whereas the true skeptic does what I do and is objective and does a lot of work for me, because there's all these bullshit stories around the internet about giant skeletons, and there are skeptics who uncover the truth of it and save me a lot of time, and I appreciate it. And I would just maybe draw them into the middle a little more, just to be open-minded, because I believe that there are a lot of mysteries worth exploring.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So I read your book where you've got a accumulation of all the accounts and stories, at least in one volume that you guys had put together. Say when you sent that to me, I read it all in one sitting, because I have to say I didn't know there was quite that much information out there about it. So it is intriguing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you notice, they're saying the same things. Like the first, what I got back from people that were trying to dismiss the idea of unusually tall skeletons was that it was like like hoaxes and misidentified mastodon bones. And I'm like, no, that's not the case. These are human burials. How can you say things like all across the country in an era of inefficient communication, mentioning like the jawbone size over the face of the finder? They're really, I understand you can easily just sit back and say, just show me the physical evidence, and I would say the same thing if I was skeptical, and I am actually. But for me, it's more of a common sense, logic, and reason thing, where all these respected people all around the country, it wasn't like they were on Facebook, in these archaeological digs or unearthing burial mounds or whatever, are reporting the same kind of just outrageous finds. So, I just find it compelling,
Oh yeah. Saying oversized people. I mean, they've been documented in other countries and stuff too, and not just in the United States. So I mean, it's really not that far fetched, I wouldn't think. But
how do you think that plays? How do you think that plays into today's society? Like my best friend, who I'm currently living with, because we just me and my fiance just moved states, and we're in the process of house hunting. My buddy, he's 7 foot tall, just a massive guy. He wears a 16 foot or a size 16 shoe, just absolutely big guy, and his brother is even bigger than he is. So, I mean, in historical documentation, that would classify as a giant. And you have all these people, you know, you got like Shaquille O'Neal, Yao Ming, you know, coming from different parts of the world that are just these massive guys. How do you think that ties into this almost genealogy of giants into today's society?
Well, I would say that for, you know, based on the number of 7-footers in the general population, you know, like, for instance, the Smithsonian Ethnology reports document 17 7-foot and taller skeletons that their professors found, sometimes pushing 8 feet. And for them to, you know, a 7-footer is, geez, I wish I had the stats on me, but it's extremely rare to be over 7 foot tall, exceedingly rare. And they would have to have, you know, unearthed millions of burial mounds or something like that to get the numbers they did in total. I think what I'm looking at is not your average, you know, say, anomalous 7-footer. A lot of these accounts report multiple skeletons that are well over 7 foot tall, sometimes even taller than that. And that's kind of the heart of the matter we're getting at. Like, is there some genetic link that caused this, or is it just more? Is it basically, you know, miscalculation, disarticulation, inaccurate regression formulas? Like, what is going on here? And I will say there's so many specific measurements of femur bones and skull circumferences that it really raises your eyebrows, I think. So, I mean, that's a logical question. And another thing is proportionality. You're talking about the skeletons, and even if you read, like, the President's chapter where the Osage Indian chiefs went to meet Thomas Jefferson, these are like 6.5 to 7 foot guys who are massive, proportional, like NFL linemen who are 7 foot tall, who, like, rip your arm off and beat you with it, you know, not like skinny NBA guys. So is there some genetic marker that they have that is hidden in plain sight? That's a question.
Yeah, so it'd be really difficult because, I mean, there's evidence, I mean, because we're derived with Homo sapiens, and people don't realize a lot of time, like when you talk about Neanderthals and stuff, that was actually a different species of human that's recorded to have lived at the same time. So if that's possible, and they think, you know, like Homo sapiens and Neanderthals interbreeded, you know, that's where we came from. So if there's another race or species of humans, it could very well be hidden in the genome somewhere that you'd have to look for.
No.
So
that's a very good point, and actually we covered it in the show. It's the find in the Denisovan cave in Siberia a couple of years ago. They found a finger bone and 2 teeth, I believe, or just 1 tooth. They might have found a second, but anyways, the tooth was so well. First of all, the Denisovans are a new breed of
human.
I'm sorry. What's the classification? Well, anyways, they bred with Neanderthals and they bred with humans, and the belief is that Neanderthals actually were bred out of existence, were absorbed by humans. That's the thought now. Mm-hmm. So anyways, 40,000 years ago, there was an orgy of these 3 species mating. So we have a Denisovan DNA and Neanderthal DNA in small amounts. But anyways, the tooth of this Denisovan male that was found was so large that they thought it was a cave bear. And so we haven't found more evidence, but that hybridization could have taken place, and it could present itself down the line. And there's a 4th species called Species X that was also mating with this. I think they found it in Spain in a Neanderthal cave there. Getting a little blurry with the facts here, but there's a 4th species X, they're still looking for. And then I'll quickly say in Sulawesi in Indonesia, they just found hand tools that predate who they thought the people that they thought lived there about 40,000 years ago, then by like 60,000 years, and they're now going to figure out who the hell it was and what their physical remains look like. And this is like they're the neighbor of the Hobbit Islands. So there's all these strange anthropological mysteries going on, and I think it's really interesting. And we have a theoretical potential, at least, for, you know, giant people being part of the regular population. And, you know, I'll say that I have no religious impetus I'm a recovering Catholic. I let people can have whatever beliefs they want.
Recovering Catholic, yeah, that's a hard one to come back from. That and Judaism, I think.
I'm still recovering. Yeah. So I really, but at the end of the day, I'm not like trying to like prove a point, and I'm not trying to be right. I'm trying to get it right.
Yeah. Well, like you had said something about 2 rows of teeth, and that's something I've heard before. Like that almost sounds like a genetic anomaly. Nowadays we have people that have some 2 rows of teeth, like eye teeth and stuff like that. Is that kind of going along the same lines? And I how much of it is exaggerated into like a double row of teeth?
No, it's when I first got into it, that's what drew me in. It was like, wow, there are all these reports of double rows of teeth. It's just astounding. I never heard such a thing. I've in fact met people with double rows of teeth. And sometimes it's linked to a disease condition called acromegaly, where there's this crowding of teeth. And I think what the answer may be is there's an anthropologist named Andy White who's kind of like an uber skeptic, and he makes a good point that he believes it might be the parlance of the time. One thing that Native Americans are known for is perfect teeth. I am wondering if he's not right, that he's trying to claim that they called like perfect, like double teeth are, say, my set of teeth up and down, like if they're perfect. And I struggled with that for a while because I'm like, geez, they really go out of their way to say a remarkable feature was double rows of teeth. But the honest truth is I've compiled about 1,500 accounts with other researchers, and I've never found an account of double rows of teeth outside the United States. Whereas in England and France, we have these other accounts, hundreds of them, that are similar to the ones in the United States, but they never mention double rows of teeth. They, in fact, mention the jawbone over the face and stuff. So it might have just been the parlance of the time. I'll throw that out there, that they were basically just talking about perfect teeth rather than 2 rows of teeth. So that's a theoretical possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, because on an evolutionary on the evolutionary side, you got certain animals like there's snakes and stuff like that use that second row of teeth to help hold their prey as they strangulate them and everything. But on the hominid side, I cannot think of any practicality that would bring up a second row of teeth, a need for a second row of teeth. So that almost seems like if it was some sort of evolutionary trait, it would be almost bred out for lack of need.
No, absolutely.
Maybe there's something.
Yeah. Unless you're Shock Boy or something, it doesn't make sense. The thing was when I first encountered it, I was told that essentially the skeptic's argument was these were all made up, and I'm like, that's bullshit. There's no way all around the country, all these historians and doctors could be making up the double rows of teeth. In fact, what I think it points to is that they are really giving a good examination of these bones. Whether they, once again, believe me, I wish the burial mounds were open in the last 30 years and trained anthropologists could give us our real, totally bulletproof answers. But the reality is that these were thoroughly examined for the time, skeletal remains. But there's no way they're hoax these were all made up. But it could be something like that is the way teeth were described at the turn of the century or something like that. That to me is the leading candidate, I think, to explain this right now. Although, when you read all the accounts, kind of like, it's who knows. But you're right; it doesn't make any evolutionary sense. Why the hell you have 2 rows of teeth?
Yeah. And then in your book, you mention upon excavation that these bones are falling apart when they are digging up these skeletons. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, oftentimes the remains are so ancient that they crumble to dust after, I don't know what the oxidation or whatever happens, but even in the Smithsonian ethnology reports, oftentimes in town and county histories, a skeleton would be exhumed from an ancient tomb. It would be measured, looked at, sometimes marveled at, and it would crumble to dust. And I was kind of accused of making that up, so I didn't have to present evidence. It's like
I'd never heard of such a thing. You usually especially when you think of excavation, you think of dinosaurs and stuff like that, and fossilization. You don't hear a lot of bones and stuff disintegrating. So
yes. Well, a physical anthropologist would give a much better explanation. I would just say that it's indeed a fact, and it was documented many times. And fossilization is not occurring in skeletons that are maybe 800 years old or whatever. But the reality is, it's in the Smithsonian Ethnology Report and many other respected anthropological and archaeological journals. So it's not a fanciful thing, and it's not a way just to make something up so you don't have to, so you're not required to show the bones. It was just something that happened.
That's what it almost sounded like at first.
It does sound like it, yeah.
It sounds like a big fish story.
Are the tombs vacuumed? Is that why? This is Robert chiming in. Sorry. Are the tombs vacuum sealed? Is that what's causing this vapor? Just to go to dust, or?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, that again.
Are the tombs sealed, vacuum sealed? Because that's usually what it calls.
Yeah, that's a good question. No, it wouldn't be the case. No, actually, a lot of these are log and stone tombs within burial mounds. If you read through the Smithsonian chapter, there's a number of accounts of their scientists unearthing skeletons in Illinois and other places, and it's just, basically, so sometimes the bones are in just a fragile state and they can't be saved. But sometimes they actually bring them out into light, like it's Dr. Augustus Mitchell, 1873 Smithsonian report from, let me get this straight, Florida, Amelia Island. So Augustus Mitchell, MD, sounds like a TV show. He's working for the Smithsonian. He unearths a 7-foot skeleton with a massive skull and a giant stone axe. He said the largest axe that he had seen anywhere down south. And to his horror, to his regret, he says that he put the skull on a stump, and he's looking at it and analyzing it, and it crumbled to dust literally in a half an hour. And he wrote that in his long report for the Smithsonian. So I don't know the action that why this takes place, but I do know it was recorded all over the country. Not like this doesn't encompass every account, but there's some accounts that this is talked about, including 1873 Smithsonian report from Alton, Illinois. T.M. Perrin unearthed massive skulls. One, he said, 36 inches in circumference, which is utterly massive, and other enormous ones. And he said they all crumble to dust, which sucks, And I'm pissed because there's no photographic proof, and there's no skull that goes back to the museum so they can document it. So there is a high level of frustration here, because you talk about this, people think you're out of your mind. You're like, no, I'm just read this document,
Yeah.
Well, I understand that you're not supposed to take photos of certain things that are excavated, because the flash can cause damage and that oxidation or whatever you're speaking of. But there would have to be certain environments to cause the bone to become that brittle to where it would just fall apart.
That's what happens with a lot of cave paintings. Paintings, like when you go a lot of these places that you can go look at early human cave paintings and stuff, you can't take any pictures due to that one reason. The lighting is very controlled.
Yeah, I would say that obviously the Smithsonian scientists, I'm spinning a tall tale, They're just reporting what they find in matter-of-fact fashion. This is only compromising a certain, a minimal percentage of the accounts. And if this is a reality, then there has to be more photographic evidence out there, because there are so many accounts of like the head of physical anthropology or prehistoric anthropology, Thomas Wilson, of the Smithsonian in 1897. One of the accounts I cover in the book in Miamisburg, he reports an 8-foot, 1.5-inch skeleton that all the scientists are looking at. They're marveling at it. He authenticates the find. There's a hand-drawn picture of it, and I have it in the book. And essentially, they list it as like one of the largest known giants in human history. They get the list of it in the article. And it was on display also. So it's just like, you think if they put this on display and it's like somebody walk by and say, hey, dude, that freaking skeleton's 5'7", like if, you know what I'm saying? Like, how could all these, it's just this really frustrating thing where I'm told, you're out to lunch, you're on acid or something, and, all the middle, the mid-woodland average height was 5'7". And I'm saying, well, I don't know, man. Like, there are so many accounts of respected heads of scientific institutions that are claiming these things, and I don't know. I know it's
well,
yeah.
Do you do much
there's been
research? Do you do much research into the big Sasquatch, North American great ape, that sort of thing? Does that kind of tie into some of your do you think there's some like mythological bleed over of the large hairy hominid, large giant? Is there some sort of bleed over that kind of carries into some of this written and oral history?
Yeah, in the sense that not only Native American tribes, but there are oral traditions all around the planet that talk about some hairy giant ape roaming the woods, and it's not something I've studied extensively, but at the same time, I can understand the frustration, because you could logically say, there has to be a breeding population. Where are the physical remains? And I understand the frustration that there were so many people who were seeing something, and I don't know really what it is, and it's been reported throughout time, including by native tribes. So I don't know what to make of it, and I'm not going to certainly disparage somebody. No. I'd be so pissed if I saw something that was,
Yeah, with the giants, you're saying that there is skeletal remains, that they're just like falling apart, and so there is that evidence there for the giants that, like with the whole Bigfoot thing, they're always saying, where's the skeleton, where's the proof and stuff like that. Well, it seems like the proof is there for the giants, yet why is it not more mainstream?
Well, there's not a lot of physical evidence. There's a lot of textural accounts, but there is a real lack of physical evidence. And, you can, make a case and say this is interesting, but you need physical proof. You need bones of some non-diseased human well out of normal range, say 9 foot or something like that, to really kind of open some eyes and say, whoa, maybe there's, a genetic reality here. So
there still is not actual on display physical evidence of said giants.
No, and nothing beyond, once again, like a disease condition or something like that. So it's a really odd thing, and my take is that science will give us our answers. Oh no, I'm sorry. Heidelbergensis, I think in 1909 in Germany, in Heidelberg, Germany, the first bones of Heidelbergensis started to show up, and they were, I think, just normal size, like 5'9", maybe a touch taller than normal. And they go back 150,000, 200,000 years ago, I believe. They are, or Denisovans, who I talked about, descended from Heidelbergensis. They found that. So there's some genetic thread. Anyways, there's a South African strain of Heidelbergensis, and Professor Lee Berger has procured bones over the last, I don't know however long, couple decades or whatever, that indicate that many of the South African strain of Heidelbergensis were 7 foot and taller, and they have a femur bone that is twice the normal width of a regular femur bone, but there's only half of it. So the question is, were they unusually robust like the Neanderthal, although Neanderthal were slightly smaller than humans, or are we talking about an enormous race, basically, or strain of Heidelbergensis in South Africa, which is an interesting question. They haven't found intact femur bones, but they found, once again, if you Google Lee Berger and Heidelbergensis, and even go to Wikipedia, they will talk about his claim that basically this population exceeded 7 feet quite often, which is a pretty alarming proposition from a very well-respected anthropologist who, in fact, a couple months ago made this astounding find in Africa of, I think, some million-year-old species with the bones still intact. So, there are whispers and rumors that are happening. And my take is, once again, is science will give us our answers. So let's just see how things proceed.
Yeah, I was saying to touch on that question, I've been researching a little bit because that came up to me too about the bones and not being able to find physical evidence. Some of the claims sound a little exaggerated, how they automatically just poof and turn to ash. But like anything else, your bones do disintegrate over time, especially if they're not cured or prepared properly. So it's actually very difficult to find ancient remains.
Certainly, but once again, that isn't a large part of the case at all. That's just kind of an odd. Yeah, the idea of them crumbling the dust is not somebody covering the tracks. That's just this odd thing that was reported in scientific journals. The bottom line is there are more than enough enormous skeletons that were reported to have been on display, and if there's no photographic or physical proof forthcoming, then they just end up being tall tales, which is hard for me to believe. But if you are trying to make this case, you better come up with something solid. You can't just just point to historical documents.
With the disintegration, real quick, with the disintegration and everything, there's still the remains of this disintegrated bone, correct? That they have that they can, do some sort of DNA testing, correct?
Probably not. A lot of these were 1800s, late 1800s. A lot of the burial mound excavations took place then, and I don't imagine that it's crumbled to dust. That these saved remains. And it's this conundrum because a lot of the remains were, and I'm not saying this makes some cover. At first, let me say, when I first started studying this, I said, I saw so many accounts associated with the Smithsonian. I'm like, geez, there's got to be some conspiracy here. And I really thought there was some funny business going on. And the anthropologists of the time were particularly racist. The head of physical anthropology, Dr. Herlichka, he's a real piece of shit, just a total racist lunatic. And he headed the anthropology department at the Smithsonian. So I'm like, you get a bad guy and, possible cover-up. But I just think it's academic filtering. The idea of giants got thrown in with the idea of a lost civilization. I'm hearing a song.
Yeah.
Okay. I had a listener that had a question for you.
Yep.
Actually, that's okay. He said to ask him about the Parcus skeletons and ask him if this could be the reason that the skull. Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. Reason that the skull. Wow, I can't read today. About evolution theory, debunking evolution theory.
Yeah, I get some stupid song, the beep 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 or something. You guys hearing it?
Yeah. Robert, is that you?
No, it's not me. Here, watch.
Right?
You there?
Yeah. Yep.
All right, I don't know what happened there. I believe James called in. Let me see. You guys keep talking, and I'll see what guest is called in, all right?
All right.
Beep, 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 beep. I really missed that in my ear.
So, James, like, how did you come about, becoming a TV personality, getting these offers to come on these shows and stuff like that? How did that come about?
I had worked with America Unearthed. They were going to do in season 1. They did kind of I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but kind of a half-assed giant episode in Minnesota with some fake Viking or something. But I talked to the producer, or he contacted me about potentially doing an episode for season 2, and basically giving it a closer look, like all these accounts. So that got me kind of rolling and it ended up not didn't move forward with it. And serendipitously, the day that didn't happen, I was contacted by my producer, my friend John Marks, who works for Left Right Studios in New York City, and he had come up to my town to eat breakfast, and he saw one of my displays on the wall of ancient stonework around North America, and he contacted me, and he just thought, like, he was a 60 Minutes writer, and he's always looking for good ideas. He said, let's talk about, doing a show around with your investigations. So I basically told him, one of the most interesting things I've uncovered or have encountered are all these giant skeleton accounts, and I think a show investigating them would be interesting, something people really haven't heard of. I fell organically into this whole thing, so I'm not once again trying to prove the case just to prove it. It's more like I think this would be an interesting inquiry. So Ted Bourne is our other producer. He worked on the first 48. He did a bunch of seasons there. He's really talented. So Ted and John and Carmen and the whole crew, we got together and we did a sizzle reel, and Hits liked it, and they said, yeah, let's go ahead and make this the series. And the execs, I guess, like my brother and I, and they asked us to do the evaluation of the Dare Stones for a Lost Colony special, and hopefully we'll get to continue to do these kind of things. I have no formal training as a TV personality. It's more I'm just an idiot who does stonework, and and hopefully my stage presence wasn't that bad, and we pulled off an interesting show, I think.
Jim, I actually have someone that knows a lot about what you know a lot about. His name's James Ramsey, and he called in, and he just wanted to ask you a few questions. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. Go ahead, James.
Hi, Jim.
Hey, how you doing?
All right. Okay, so I have actually been doing research on these giants as well. What's interesting is I had learned about them in the late 80s, and then I didn't think anything else about them until I seen the uncovering of the Paracas skulls in Paracas, Peru.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden it was like I had an epiphany, and through a lot of religious texts, as well as people speaking about their history, there's always been a story about giants. My question is, do you think that this could be a cover-up because it would actually debunk the theory of evolution?
Yeah, that's that is the big question. And is there you got a gunfight going on in the back there?
Yeah, I got a little thing going on. Not a gunfight, but I got some things going on here. I'm gonna mute it while you talk. Sorry about that.
Sorry, just being a dick. Yeah, no, it's a very good question, and I think it's more like science basically wrestled control away from religion in the late 1800s. There was definitely this battle between science and religion. It still occurs today, and yeah, I would look at it as academic filtering. because I work with plenty of anthropologists and archaeologists who are in virtually, you know, all these professionals are just doing their job. But there is this kind of understanding. You can't go into that realm, not like, you know, it's just like, oh, that's the kooky zone, you know, that's the place you don't want to tread. And you have the Clovis barrier, for instance, which was like holy writ for like 90 years. And like Jim Vieira and Collins in Texas, these well-respected professionals started to come up with pre-Clovis dates, and they were attacked, and they were like accused of planting evidence or like screwing up the dates and stuff. And it's like, you know, so you have that natural knee-jerk reaction in the sciences. There's no question about it. So these things take a long time to change, and I don't know, you know, like, you know, can there be two coexisting realities like uniformitarianism and catastrophism in geology? Like, yes, the Grand Canyon might have taken millions of years to form, but that doesn't mean there haven't been cataclysmic floods and cometary impacts. So in evolutionary terms, you know, is there genetic intervention? Is, you know, what the hell is going on? Why does every culture around the world have oral traditions of giants? It's ridiculous. And little people. And all the great mystics in human history, like Rudolf Steiner, Casey, Blavatsky, the Rosicrucians and Freemasons, they all believe that not only were giants and little people a fact, they independently claimed that, but that they were part of the lost colony of Atlantis. So it's like, I don't know what to say. I would say, you know, it would be very tough to do the sweeping worldwide cover-up. I think more it's just this kind of academic filtering that happens. And if you come up with wacky ideas, you know, you're under house arrest like Galileo, you know?
Right. Yep. See, there was some teachings that I had actually went under through some very interesting sources, and one of the sources said that there was, at one point in time, there were 7 races of humans, and within those 7 races there was 14 tribes. So each race had 14 different tribes, which when they said tribes, it was you could tell the race not by just the color, but by certain differences. Like, for example, I know that when they did talk about the giants always had 6 digits. They always mentioned them with 6 digits. So when they talked about the giants with 6 digits, and like you said earlier in the show, a lot of them was malicious. I can't even say that word, but they were bad. They ate men.
Yeah, I know. I don't know where that comes out of left field, but it's everywhere. There are not only does the Bible, I think it's Samuel 21:20, talk about the giant of Gath having 6 fingers and 6 toes. There are petroglyph sites like all around the Southwest with enormous feet with like 6 toes and hands with 6 fingers, and you find it around the world. Yeah, it's the oddest thing. Easter Island, I believe, is the petroglyphs with 6 fingers, and you got to be cautious and you got to bide your time and you got to let things unfold. But I think what you're saying, that there is a history that is not like we think, and that's just, as a detective, that's what my gut tells me, and I can't make wild proclamations as fact. But it's certainly, it's the oddest thing. It's not just like, oh, Jack and the Beanstalk. It's like over to my right, I have a 30-pound stone axe that somebody sent me to analyze from Illinois that was found like 150 years ago. And in the book I cover too, there's like enormous axes everywhere. And in South Africa a few years ago, Oxford scientists at the lowest level of this basin, along with 10,000 normal-sized artifacts, found 4 enormous hand axes. If you Google South Africa giant hand axes, you will see them. They're like 12 inches tall. They are hand-hewn. They are worn, and the archaeologists don't know what to make of them. And they're not going to proclaim giants wielding this, but it's, once again, the oddest thing is the appearance of giant artifacts all around the planet.
Yeah. When I do research, sometimes I'll go days without eating just to research so that my mind can stay clear. And by understanding history, the stories that were told, like I know stories, a lot of the Native American stories as well, where a lot of the Native Americans were saying that, you know, a lot of the hunters would go hunting buffalo, and there would be a giant to jump out of the forest, and he was so big he could pick up 2 buffalo and run back into the forest. You could hear those stories, and they call them lore, but you got to remember there's always some truth to the fiction, right?
Well, I would say that we studied with, like, Ross Hamilton was on our show, and Vine Deloria Jr. was a Lakota elder who wrote a bunch of books, very, very well-respected Native American elder who was he was on PBS specials. He was an activist, but he gathered all these Native elders to basically get the oral traditions straight from them, and they all talked about giants and little people as oral traditions of their tribe, and kind of reiterated the point that these were passed down often by the female who was trained in this as a young girl in this art of getting every word right, of correct portrayal.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're finding now is that Native oral traditions around the planet, like they predicted tsunami frequency on the West Coast, a correct rendering of the geologic record over 10,000 years ago where I live, and they're understanding and telling stories of geological events and Earth, like cometary impacts and stuff. But they're also matter-of-factly talking about giants, pre-Ice Age giants, like you said,
mm-hmm.
being, hunting the mastodon like they would hunt the buffalo. And that's where we're at, man. And obviously I'd love to have, a 40-inch femur bone to crack somebody over the head with, but, you got to look at it like, why would they make this stuff up? It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And
there's
so, all around the world, too. It's not just like 1-2 Native tribes. It's like everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's like,
everywhere.
it's so stunning. And you can't get out of, like, people talk about giants until the freaking, the earth breaks in two. I don't know what it means, and maybe there'll be proof, and hopefully there will in the future, but it's in the human psyche for some reason.
Well, have you heard about the original Vikings being giants? They stood from 7 to 14 feet tall, had red hair.
I've heard like the Irish Fomorians or the, the Nordic peoples from Norway, like the, you're talking like pre-Ice Age people or?
Yep, they were. So this subject is something. I mean, I've got a lot of like you said, I've got a lot of research on it, and it was just an amazing thing because it, when you're younger and you learn things and you hear some of the stories that your elders tell, it's like, wow, that's an interesting story to be telling. And as you get older, you have another type of influence, basically school and stuff like that. So then you kind of block that out until it resurfaces.
Yes.
And then once it resurfaces, you start going, wow. I actually have a really, really good story about a giant who went into a village and grabbed these 2 women and swallowed them whole. And one of the warrior Indians, him and a group of other Indians, went out to capture him. And they said that there's a hill currently, I forgot the location, but there's a hill here in the Americas where the giant is actually buried.
And we just, Hugh Newman and I just released our book, Giants on Record, and Hugh actually did the chapter on Native, history or traditions of giants, and there were all kinds of stories like that in that chapter and that he collated. And it's just, and you're like, what are you talking about? Like some giant eating people? That's absurd. But tribe after tribe after tribe, and in other parts of the world, no, it's the oddest thing. There's so much, like I said, circumstantial evidence for reality all around the planet, and then the startling lack of physical remains. And I get it. I get where somebody could be skeptical, but like I said, what does your gut tell you when you investigate your things? That's what you go by. Don't try to prove the case because it's going to say something about you or I have to be right. It's more like what's your gut tell you. And I've not listened to my gut several times in this journey when I've finally changed my mind about a different matter and I've been wrong. And, you can't be afraid to be wrong, but you really follow your gut through the story. And, yes, it's an astonishing one, I'll tell you that.
Oh, yeah, it is. It's fascinating. So did you hear? So you know about the grave that they dug up that was 500 years old. So it was more recent than some of the stories that you hear of old. But they were all giant. And when they found that this grave, it was a grave of I believe 300. It was just as recent in the Americas. It was as recent as 500 years. Now, what's interesting is, like you said, there are people in Africa who are tall. You know of the tribe called the Maasai?
Yep.
Those are that's a tribe of very tall people. I believe their average height is 6'6" or 6'5".
Yes, Manu Bol came from the Watusi, I think. The Plains Indians at the time were considered the tallest tribe in the world, and the Osage Indians were enormously tall too. And in the Ona people in Patagonia, I have pictures that my friend found that Frederick Cook took, English explorer, of like 6'6" woman, 7'2", 7'4" males, and all the explorers said the same thing, like unusually tall, over 7 foot people. That's another thing, is the early explorers, John Smith, Coronado, Vespucci, Magellan, they from Virginia down to Patagonia, they all encountered giant tribal chiefs that they specifically talked about, like on the knees, the giant leader was taller than all our men on his, blah, 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 like really going out of their way to talk about this is not a 6 foot person. This is like 7.5, 8.5 feet tall, which is pretty astounding. So we look at the early explorers for their observation ability, like a cop, and we believe everything else they say. But all these accounts of giant people they encountered, they just get pushed away, even though they were chronicled by these great explorers. So it's just another odd twist, And native people, the natives were like the last stronghold, basically, of a bloodline, if you will, theoretically, that was wiped out by disease and warfare and like so quickly. And these burial mounds were untouched for thousands of years. Obviously, Native Americans didn't touch them, and then Whitey shows up and like unearths all these, these colonial vultures ripped everything to shreds in like 150 years and left little trace of an astounding native culture,
Right.
That's my rant.
Yep. They. Yep. So that is really interesting. I'm about to have to get off of here though, but I'm still listening to you talk. But it's it's a pleasure talking to you.
Cool. Yeah. Keep up the good work. I'm glad you called.
Yep.
Thanks for calling
in,
James.
And,
have a good one, James.
No problem. All right. Now see you
James.
I'll talk to you guys later. All right.
So, my cat just bit me. Linus, so what is the background of you guys? Let me ask you a question. Like what is your what's your orientation around these controversial topics?
Oh, well, actually, Robert and I originally started it. James is a rather, Andrew is a rather new debunker boy. We started out because we were really tired of seeing the complacency and we call it the idiocracy within the paranormal community. People that latch onto these very lucid, ideas and stuff like that. And we just really wanted to bring forth some scientific relevancy and some sort of base
clarity
to the paranormal community, and also in the same time, get some laughs and have some fun with dealing with some ridiculous people in the paranormal community. It started out with us tackling a lot of ghost claims and stuff like that. We're all believers. We're just extreme skeptics, and we just started branching into more. We started branching into more topics and everything. Next thing you know, we're doing shows on American politics. Kind of exposing some of the idiocracies within American politics. And now we're here. Now we just expanded into Giants. So it's an ever expanding show, and we have lots of fun with it. We've actually been doing this for about 2.5 years now.
Cool. Yeah. Go on. Yeah.
No, I was saying we like educating people, so that's why it's so great you're on the show, because there's a lot of people out there that they'll take a little story and add 100 pounds to it, and then you got some myth that's massive, and we're going to stop that kind of stuff from happening.
So much controversy. So
absolutely, yep. I'll give my take. It's I killed off my Facebook account like a year ago. If you want to get brain rot and brain cancer, stay on Facebook. Social media it's such a worthless whorehouse where you have people. There's one of the things is you got to understand the dynamic. There are professionals, and I agree with a vast amount of geological, anthropological, and archaeological theories, but there is, I wouldn't say a fair amount, but I think something is amiss. But on the internet, normally in the past, like when we grow up, in order to have an opinion, you wrote a scientific paper, you wrote a really good article, you spoke somewhere. Now, like every moron in the world has basically like a venue to vent or to, you know what I mean? So, I don't want to, so I don't want to be like unsympathetic, because there's a lot of people who don't have the time or maybe the intellectual wherewithal to like investigate certain topics, and I understand that. So I don't want to be like, like I'm high and mighty. That's not it at all. But there's so much garbage on the internet and around, like, this, like the freaking horn skull. You got this stupid horn skull that was made, right? And they're attaching it to a false story from 1914, where we debunk it in the book, where in fact Allison Skinner, the archaeologist, there was this. There's a New York Times article that giants with horns were found, right? So the archaeologist listed Allison Skinner the next day, and I found the editorial in the New York Times. He's pissed. He writes back. He's like, no. A reporter said, look, those skeletons have horns, and they had deer horns at the top of the skeletons. And in fact, they weren't even giant. They were normal size. So this guy basically debunked that whole thing. But on the internet, like if you want to investigate or get into any of these subjects, you gotta start from scratch. I did it years ago. You gotta burn it to the ground and start on your own, because there's so much garbage on the internet. Yeah. But on the other side, there's a lot.
We're about debunking and kind of making fun of the ridiculousness, and we're also about educating and bringing to light things that are plausible, and things that have some sort of merit to them. And we usually do it in a very comical way, actually. You would not believe some of the callers we've gotten calling in. So we had one lady that called in that claimed that her adult toy was turning on by itself, and she believed it was a ghost.
Definitely.
So we
the double dong is turning on its own.
Yeah.
There's a lot of freaks out there, and there's a lot of weird people. Like, the human race gonna get its shit together, because I met a lot of people. You know, I'm kind to people, but like, you know, people gotta get their shit together. You know, like tighten up their game. And you know, I always like I rebuild stone walls and I do stone artwork and volunteer a lot of my time when I'm not doing actual work myself. And you know, I just like, I don't know, I think technology is being used in the wrong way. Really, you know, I don't know. I find it, maybe it's just my orientation or my disposition, but like too much computer time makes me want to hang myself. It's much better getting outside and taking a hike or something. But anyways, you know, there is a lot of mystery to explore. I really think there are finds all the time. There's really fascinating stuff. And I'll say Göbekli Tepe, it's a site I'm going to visit fairly soon, in Turkey, is a 12,000-year-old temple site, and it was purposely buried after being in use for 1,000 years. The oldest enclosure, it's dug by, it's been excavated by a competent archaeological team from Germany. If, you know, you listeners probably know the story already, but it's 12,000 years old. It's doubled civilized humanity. It's a massive megalithic site. But what is curious is that the oldest enclosures are the most sophisticated. So somehow these hunter-gatherer peoples in Anatolia 12,000 years ago decided one day, like, let's stop doing what we've been doing the last 20,000 years. Let's invent agriculture, and let's build the most massive, incredible megalithic complex on the planet, and then we'll bury it, you know. But besides that, you would assume the evolution of civilization, of society, of building techniques goes in a particular direction. But this is in reverse. Why are the most sophisticated enclosures the oldest? Did they adopt a legacy from a pre-Ice Age, you know, survival culture, or did, you know what I'm saying? And it's a reasonable question to ask. So we have things that are beyond comprehension beyond the scope of belief for most archaeologists, say 20 years ago. Now they are reality. And there's Gunung Padang in Indonesia that's being looked at now that might be 15,000 years or older. So there is a lot of anthropological and archaeological and geological mysteries, and there's freaking new planets being found in fake alien megastructure, whatever, you know. At least it's, you know, I know I've went a rant here, but my friend Greg Little makes a good point, is that, like, physics and astronomy, you know, they take, like, say, the alien issue, and they use it to their advantage, you know. They may not believe it, you know. I certainly don't believe aliens had anything to do with megalithic construction, but, you know, really? They have, like...
Some people do, though.
I don't know.
Unfortunately,
I honestly think that
actually one of the people we're trying to get on the show is David Childress from Ancient Aliens.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah, you know, I know David. He's a really nice guy. He's been around the world a million times. He's great. I just think I'll say this. I just think they have a premise for the show. And there's so much interest in it. The show works well because not because they like find something new. It's more there's all these interesting historical pods of like places and events and, you know, mysterious things that you've never known about. But they have to always tie to aliens to make the show go forward. So it becomes absurd.
Here's the thing that is my biggest pet peeve about Ancient Aliens. My fiance absolutely loves it. Usually she has to sleep with the TV on, and usually that's what I hear throughout my sleep. The problem is that damn host of Ancient Aliens, all he does is ask leading questions. That's all he does. They don't answer anything throughout the show. They just keep asking questions. Well, what if we did come from a race? What if Ancient Aliens did go this?
Yes. And, you know, like I said, it's thoroughly entertaining, but it's a parody of itself at this point. And I like the original. You know what it is? That people love to travel the world vicariously through a show, and they love megalithic monuments, and that's what's really interesting. But yeah, no, I know, and the thing is, the debunker. You know, there's a skeptic, which is like The skeptic is the rational, objective kind of gatekeeper of science, like the good guy, basically. The debunker, not the debunker.
Finally, somebody just portrayed us as not the monster. And you know, we you would not believe how many death threats we've gotten for because we give rational explanations and people don't want to hear things like
people
that.
People don't want to hear it.
And
but I've been there. The thing is, I'll tell you the dynamic, and I was there before because it's like religion and politics. You become entrenched, and there are people that. There are debunkers or, you know, who are true unbelievers. They're just assholes. And they're basically like lizard brain douchebags who don't make enough dopamine and they just get off on insulting people. That's different than like.
Those are trolls. Those are internet trolls.
They're trolls, right? Essentially.
Dude, that's why I don't do shows, because when I'm in a bad mood, I'm kind of like that. So. We got another caller if you're interested, Jim.
Sure.
All right, so his name's Mike Quinn. I'll just bring him in. And you're on, Mike.
Hey, great show tonight, guys. I had a quick question for the speaker. Do you feel that there may be some connection to any prehistoric foods or insect malady that may have caused the giantism? Say, for example, in Hawaii, they ate a poi or taro root that made Hawaiians and Polynesians very strong and very big. And then we look at things like in Mexico with the Tarahumara tribe that was able to run the marathons.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. We cover it somewhat in the book, the different theories. And one of the, I'll give you more of a mystical angle that we've learned through like Native American traditions is that, well, first of all, we have several giant accounts that talk about that there was a sealed cask of corn buried with the giant. It's an 8.5-foot giant account from Illinois, 60 foot down in a burial mound. They uncovered it and they took the corn and they planted it. And there's several instances of this, like Indiana's freak corn, and the corn was an incredible yielder, and it actually. One of the headlines was "Grew in spite of age," indicating, you know, the antiquity of it. So Ross Hamilton, he's the godfather of giantology. He's a friend. He talks about basically the earth and mound sites being like ancient earth machines, and that, you know, people put megalithic, you know, like standing stones around the world. The thought is just like if you go to an acupuncturist. And you have energy channels in your body, the earth has the same thing. And there are ley lines and hot spots. And you basically bring peace, prosperity, and abundance to the population. And there is that thought that was the case with native tribes, that there was basically, you know, a dietary regimen and, if you will, like an esoteric energy regimen that helped them grow particularly long and tall. And I think that's a reasonable theory. Another one is that were there different atmospheric conditions in the past? You know, before the last ice age, we had megafauna and megaflora. Were the megahumans, you know, not like roaming the planet, but were there a part of humankind that was, you know, particularly tall? I don't think that's insane to bring up. Native Americans say.
Now, are we talking about when the continents were still together? I think they called it Pangea or something like that.
Pangea, no, that's like an enormous, like millions of years back. I'm talking like over 15,000 years ago, like pre-Ice Age.
Gotcha.
No, the era, like frankly, in North America, we had like 600-pound beavers, and where the hell, you know, where the fuck did dinosaurs come from, by the way? You know what I mean? Like, they don't make any sense. It's like true. But yeah, to the caller's point.
They turned into chickens.
Yeah, they did turn into chickens, man.
Yeah.
But it's a freak show. It's like, you know, like whoever made this place, like dropped acid in the water, you know, like dinosaurs and just like, come on, man.
Said nope, that don't work. Nope, that don't work.
Right. So yes, that's a viable theory, and I'm open to the idea of atmospheric differences, possibly in the past. Yeah,
Well,
you know,
didn't they
if
find,
you go across, go on.
Haven't they found like 18-inch human footprints fossilized and stuff like that?
No, that was a fossilized penis, I think. Yes, actually.
Well, I don't know how
you're a time machine.
Yes, it was me in my last life. No, they have found.
Yeah,
it keeps turning on.
Enormous footprints. Yes. That's another freak show. Like in South Africa, there's that giant footprint. Now, you know, you could say, oh, a giant steps in the granite 200 million years ago, or you could say, well, maybe more likely the native people carved it as some kind of warning because it has 6 toes. My buddy Hugh Newman investigated that giant footprint, and yeah, it's just another odd thing. I don't know what to make of it. I really wish there was a time machine and we'd get all these freaking answers, but it wouldn't be as interesting either. It's like, you know, when I finally die and wake up in hell, I'll figure out where my wallet and all my pens went, and it won't be very interesting, you know.
Don't worry, at least we'll be able to hold interesting conversations there.
Yeah, I'll be standing there with you, buddy. So, you know.
Napoleon.
Yeah. You're gonna die, and they're gonna go, well, you should have stuck with Catholicism.
Definitely, man.
Breaks over. No, that's old joke.
What's that?
Yeah. Everybody back on the
Breaks
head.
over. Everybody's standing in shit. Get back on your hands. Yeah, it's an old joke.
Well, I got a question. From your research, from your studies, on these giants, do they seem as a race more nomadic or colonized?
It's really difficult to make judgments about if they existed, what they were, and how they behaved. You know, if you go with biblical accounts, you hear like Moses sends out scouts, and they come back and they say these giants, we were like grasshoppers in this sight, and you know, I really don't know what to make of it. You know, they're portrayed as malevolent oftentimes in the Bible, right? When you talk about, they had a million different names, Rephaim, and that they were basically ancient a-holes. But they're also portrayed as the great civilizers, like the bearded, tall ones, like Viracocha, Kon-Tiki, the great sages who showed up after the flood in Egypt and Central America, South America, to basically jumpstart civilization again. So, yeah, it's a very good question. I would think if a reality, you probably have both realities, that you have just like the dualistic universe we live in, you would just have, just like little people, once again, it's a freak show, but Lewis and Clark, all the tribes told them, like at Spirit Mountain, South Dakota, don't go up there. There's these malevolent, these strange little people like Chucky with poison darts and crazy eyes. It's true. And then they went up there, I think, with like 18 armed guards. None of the native tribes want to go up there. Like these fucked up little people were like killing them and stuff. And they tell these stories to Lewis and Clark. Yeah, it's crazy. So I don't know. Honestly, I just know, you can only piece together what these strange sources tell you. You know, a skeleton doesn't talk too much.
That's always been a fear of mine, to get mugged by a gang of buff midgets or something. So I wouldn't go there either.
What about raped by a gang of strippers, midget strippers?
Yeah. Well,
oh God.
Good stuff. Yeah.
No, stop. Oh, sorry.
But things like this, they garner interest, though. I mean, it's far fetched and not quite the same topic. But I mean, if you think about it, well, like even giant squids, all you had were rumors and stuff. And just a few years ago, they finally captured one on video. No, other than that, they just had bits and pieces. So.
Beneath the oceans probably lie the oldest or the most compelling archaeological evidence we'll find eventually. We know more about the moon than we do the oceans. Underneath many ancient temple sites, I bet you there are much older dates and ancient remains. And, you know, I am a believer, frankly, or once again, my gut or my intuition tells me that there was a pre-Ice Age advanced civilization. I really think that is, and it's, you know, with the dating or the redating of the Sphinx that Robert Schoch and John Anthony West did in the 80s, I believe, the early 90s, because of the weathering patterns that could only have been done by water, they pushed the date back beyond 8,000 years old. And one of the criticisms of that dating was that although geologists agree, Egyptologists don't, but the thought was there are no other temple sites or megalithic structures this old, so it's totally out of left field. They couldn't exist. But now we have Göbekli Tepe, which is 12,000-year-old massive megalithic site. And then when you revisit that, you don't get much traction. You're like, oh, I thought you told us that this is the reason, one of the main reasons why this couldn't be. So I really believe that we have sites around the planet that are older than we think. And we will see that there'll be more and more evidence that will come forward in the next couple decades. And I just, remain open. All throughout human history, civilizations have been predominantly wrong with their theories about the past and, the nature of reality or their understanding of the universe. And everyone becomes more advanced in a particular way, thinking they have all the answers. What does ours have wrong? Say we have, 9.5% wrong theories that are 9.5% wrong across the board. Are they worth exploring or just like freaking sit back and go to sleep? Isn't it worth testing these hypotheses?
We keep talking about your book and stuff like that, and we have yet to plug it. Do you want to go ahead and talk about your book, where to get it? Has it been published yet?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I thought so.
Yeah, it came out several months ago. It is called Giants on Record, America's Hidden History, Secrets in the Mounds, and the Smithsonian Files. Giants on Record. Hugh Newman, Jim Vieira. Hugh is my buddy. Hugh's on Ancient Aliens, but he never talks about aliens. He is a megalithic researcher. He runs megalithomania tours and conferences all around the world. And very bright. He was mentored by John Michel, this brilliant geomancer. And Hugh has been around the world about 17 different times, to every site you can imagine. Göbekli Tepe, all around
That
Peru.
sounds like a dream job.
Yes. I was just in London with him at a conference. I stayed at his place in Glastonbury, and I got to go to a bunch of sites out there. But he organized the Origins tour with Andrew Collins, Graham Hancock, a lot of really cool speakers. I got to speak there as well as Hugh. And I'm going to Peru and Bolivia with him and Brian Forrester to study megalithic sites in November. And he's going back to Göbekli Tepe in May with Brian Forrester and Andrew Collins. So he really has his pulse on a lot of really cool information. And so we teamed up a couple of years ago and decided to write this book because there's so many really interesting twists and turns of the story. And then about 9 months ago, we were going to finally publish it, and then we said we got to dive back in and just give more to it, basically, because I don't want people kick out books quickly, and I just want it to be something that stands the test of time, that I feel good, like we really uncovered every stone, and we could throw it out there and let people evaluate for themselves whether they're into it or not. And we've got like 10 5-star reviews so far, and it's been well received. I think it's it's good. It's like there's not a lot of bullshit there.
Well, I hope you would think it's good. You wrote it.
I told you, I'm a recovering Catholic. I can't praise myself. I'm gonna whip myself like Opus Dei. No, it's good. It's good. It's very interesting, and there's a lot of cool stories in there too, like real cool stories, like the Lost City of Giants of Sonora, and it there's enough reality in there. It's just not like, I'm not going to tell you this bullshit story like, oh, I know a guy who knows a guy who was the janitor at the Smithsonian and he saw the secret vault. I'm not going to make up bullshit stories. I'm gonna like portray things.
Well, good.
We'd
have to have another show
right?
debunking that if you did.
It's just to answer that actually earlier point. People have a will to believe. Like the Smithsonian story came out where Smithsonian admits to destruction of thousands of skeletons or something like that. So it comes out, and it's on some fake website, and I write about it in the preface of the book. The over willingness to believe, and everybody's emailing me. Did you see the story? And I'm like, oh my God! Did you spend like 4 minutes checking it out because it's a hoax? And if it weren't a hoax, it'd be like front page headlines all around the world. You know, if such a thing would happen, you have to apply critical thinking. And so I understand that will to believe. And that will to believe comes from, honestly, it's not just because there are some hardcore like debunkers who are really like assholes who like try to belittle people and they turn off a lot of other people on the other side. It really boils down to our society sucks ass. You know, it's dehumanizing. You know, people are frustrated. And there's real conspiracies, right? There is like Halliburton and Dick Cheney and these sociopaths running the show. Endless wars. You know, instead of like, pumping like $1 trillion over 10 years to rebuild the infrastructure of the United States, like put all these people back to work in the inner cities and get like, African-American guys who are shit out of luck because of racism, put them to work rebuilding bridges and have this massive great project to revitalize the freaking country. We piss away
No, just give them money.
Year, right?
Yeah.
And endless wars. And you talk about ISIS, they are a side effect of U.S. foreign policy. We killed Mossadegh in 1953 in Iraq. We overthrew him. Pinochet in Chile, the Shah of Iran. We've created this monster. We've radicalized so many people. Our country, the echelon of our country sucks. Our politicians suck and they're gutless, and people are pissed. So they believe archaeology and anthropology are an arm of a corrupt system, just like the pharmaceutical industry is. You go to your doctor, they'll have no problem writing you 12 prescriptions. Is he involved in conspiracy? I don't know. But archaeologists and anthropologists, sorry about this rant, are just doing their job, and they're basically they are attached to a shitty, worthless, bankrupt, materialist culture that just blows. So that is an unfortunate side effect, and I don't think that's
Damn
a reality.
Americans.
But yeah, but it's a bunch of different countries. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's fine.
I'm against them too. I just going, yeah, you're saying everything I was saying in our last show.
But I'm not saying like the moon landing is a fucking hoax. I'm just saying that there is legitimate gripes that people have. Did you guys
You've also,
no, I was just going to say for our readers that your book, I mean, it really is really well put together with all the accounts and information that's in there. Well, like I said, I read it in one sitting, one night, all 400-some pages of it. And what I'm most curious about, I mean, Giants and stuff regardless, what interests me, because I'm here in Illinois, with how many reports there are in the area, in Janesville, Wisconsin, that I'm not far from. And it's just the actual history of the mound builders and stuff, and you don't really hear a lot about it, even from a historical standpoint. So
yeah, and that is kind of a proof I use as to point to maybe not a conspiracy, but a marginalization of Native American history. So we have an interloper showing like if the things that existed in the United States existed in Europe, they would be prized national possessions. But instead, a conquering horde destroys the burial places and the tombs of the former heroes and kings, and that's what happened. So all this unbelievable, like these massive geometric forms that predict eclipses. We have Earthen Pyramid in Cahokia that's 100 foot high with the 14-acre base. That's 1 acre larger than the Great Pyramid in Egypt. 22 million cubic feet of soil brought in from over a mile away to build this enormous complex. The point being that there was this astonishing, sophisticated in-depth Native American civilizations, plural, who did just incredible things. And I never heard about it. And that was like, it kind of irritated me to no end. It's just like, are you kidding me? I get to learn about endless tariff acts and wars and the freaking Industrial Revolution, and we hear nothing about all the mound builders. And so it's a really good point, right? And why haven't we heard? And still to this day, that very little of that is taught. It's so fascinating, and we try to make that point in the show, like really to highlight the incredible sophistication and the artifacts and the engineering that Native Americans possessed.
Can I make a comment on that real quick?
What's that?
It's Mike. I live by the Hopewell site in Newark, Ohio, and it's illegal to metal detect on that property. They've protected everything. You can't search on it. You can walk around and enjoy it, but you can't do any type of investigation on any of the mound sites anymore.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that in the sense that unless you're a professional, see, this is where somebody says, oh, it's a conspiracy or whatever. But no, it's just that you have to, when you uncover things, if you're not a professional, you will destroy the layers, the strata that will reveal ages, or artifacts could be removed out of context, or artifacts could be just taken by some dude with a metal detector. I know it's intriguing and interesting, but if you have these ancient sites that are gone over and picked over, things get out of whack and artifacts disappear, and there's the moral and ethical implications, obviously, of digging into a burial mound, and so on the one hand, it might seem a little frustrating because a lot of people do, they love going out with metal detectors and finding stuff, but at a site that is recognized and known, I think it is appropriately safeguarded.
This is kind of this kind of a little off topic, but I know you're also researching what happened in Roanoke, and what happened with those people. That's something that really interested me when I was a kid, because I heard about it in the history books. The people of Roanoke just up and vanishing. What have you found about that?
Yeah, we did a 2-hour special search for the lost colony. I guess I'm the search guy. Yeah. My brother and I did, and we teamed up with maverick archaeologist Fred Willard, who, well, first of all, I'll tell the background story. Roanoke Island was the first English attempted settlement, 1585. In St. Augustine. Yes, they disappeared. The Spanish down south in St. Augustine, Florida, had an early settlement, but the first English attempt. What's not known is that a year before, a Colonel Lane and English military men, hardened veterans from the Irish War, went around the Albemarle Peninsula from Roanoke around the whole area, and basically, pulled the Pizarro and the Cortez and murdered the native chief of Roanoke Island and did all kinds of awful stuff. So anyways, 115 colonists show up in 1587 looking to colonize Roanoke Island. And basically, unbeknownst to them, they went with the Governor John White, and that the chief had been killed by the military expedition the year before. So they had to split really quick. John White goes back, the governor, to resupply. He comes back, and they had vanished. And they wrote Croatoan on one of the fort palisades. They basically packed everything up and left. But Croatoan Island is 50 miles south, and Manteo was a native friend who lived there. And the belief is that some of the colonists went there, but the bulk of them could not be sustained. It was like a spit, like a sandbar. So what happened to basically the bulk of the colonists, the 100 colonists that went missing? A couple of years ago in the British Museum, John White, the governor, had a map from 1585, and researchers took a laser light underneath and found there was a secret patch on the map, which is really, it's like straight up Da Vinci Code. And they revealed that there was a fort there. Yes, it's in the show. It's in our show. It really came out slick. So John White, in his testimony back in England, say that the secret plan was that they would travel 50 miles into the Main. basically to settle this fort. So we found this controversial stone called the Deer Stone was found in 1937, and we, with Fred Willard, believe we pinpointed the site where this tourist claimed to have found it. And right at that site, we find this massive native settlement, a midden pile with like just football fields full of artifacts. We find it's just this amazing find. But right across the river from us, where the fort symbol was, the First Colony Foundation is digging there. And serendipitously, they reveal their findings when we're wrapping up our filming, and they start to find Elizabethan artifacts. So indeed, the colonists might have settled right in this area where we're digging, and we're going to continue to dig, in June, where this crazy stone, the Dare Stone, was purported to be found. So it's either like this great stroke of luck that the tourist, the California tourist who found it, claims that it was found there. You know, he basically picks this area in the middle of nowhere that happens to be an area where the lost colony might have been found. So it's this really fascinating story, and I hope and think we'll going to get another chance to investigate more this summer. But yeah, it's a really, once again, it's a really fascinating story.
That is awesome. Like you just answered one of my childhood, wonderments. Like, that's really cool.
I don't know if you can get it on iTunes or whatever. It's the show. It came out really slick, and once again, we found a massive native settlement at the end of the show. That was kind of like the conclusion of the archaeological dig, which you never do. That's the thing that a lot of these shows are dry humps. They gear towards dragging the audience.
Yeah. The problem with these shows is you don't know what you can take as, legitimate finds and what's just bullshit that's almost like entertainment filler. So, and I haven't seen that show yet. Honestly, I haven't had cable in 3 years, but I definitely want to watch that once I get myself a little bit better settled. But that is extremely exciting.
Yeah, well, first of all, wherever this scripted television, I don't know where it started, but a lot of it is horseshit, and it's this double-edged sword because you're trying to tell an interesting story, and you're doing some active investigation in real time. And honestly, how many times do you get like solid hits? Like in our show, in the Giant Show, we'd go to a cave, we'd find the burial spot, we'd go through the microfilm and find a photo, or find these really compelling documents, or get into these really cool cave systems that nobody's been in for 100 years, and with a theoretical possibility of finding something. But the honest truth is, at the end of the day, to find something in real time and have the camera crew there is pretty much a rarity. Yeah. But so it's kind of like it's difficult. It's really tough to pull off a quality show, quite honestly. And that's why we try to load ours with a ton of interesting information. So at the end of the day, if you don't find the freaking giant skull, the audience feels like they don't feel like they've been violated and got to go take 10 showers. They feel like they've learned something cool.
Yeah.
Well, I don't drink anymore.
Ryan game.
We're just about out of time. I think so. Robert, do you have a time mark?
16 minutes, 11 seconds.
All right. I just thank you again, Jim, for coming on the show. This has been awesome. Beyond informative, beyond awesome. I honestly will say this is probably one of our best shows that we've had as far as information and educational value goes, and entertainment. God, you kept it, you kept it live.
We didn't keep finding shiny pennies laying on the ground and shit like we usually do. So
yeah,
losing our days.
That definitely took a shredder track than I was expecting it to be honest. So that's.
I think what you're doing is cool because the honest truth is there is mystery to explore, and you need people to trust you too. And I understand that. Like, I was a victim of cognitive dissonance for a while, where I basically was hell bent on proving a case, and I didn't want to hear contrary evidence, which is kind of immature. But that's the kind of ego nonsense you get into when you're like back and forth. It's like getting a play. It's like a Republican is a Democrat. It's all nonsense. And if you have that open-minded, like inquisitive mind, you're doing a real service to like people. Like, oh, I can trust these guys. They're not gonna, they might not tell me everything. They might not tell me that the secret moon base is real, but they're gonna like tell me the truth to the best of their ability. So it's cool. And this is where these like mysteries need to be evaluated from a center position, not from an orthodox, conservative place, and not from a freak show place. So, hats off to you guys.
Yeah.
It's taken us 2.5 years to get people to even talk to us because they're afraid of the word debunker.
Yeah,
they think that we're going to
our name and run off.
So.
Well, yeah. Well, you should. Yeah, give more of a mission statement and just say that, well, you did to me, but if somebody's like reticent about coming on, just like say, no, we just want to ask reasonable questions. And I deal with, non-objective freaks all the time, and it's like, I'm the guy who's lumped in with like the lunatic fringe, so it's like, I'm not and I've been there, believe me, like I'm moving away from the cultish, feel of it because there's not the amount of objectivity needed to suit my desires. So I like kind of freaks. I like people who like to think differently, but I don't like non-critical thinkers,
Yeah, we did a show. We did a show where we had this guy come on who was one of those pay $5 to get your ordainship, and suddenly he believes he's the right hand of God. For 2 years, he says he's done over 5,000 exorcisms and seen everything that was pretty much on the show Supernatural. Yeah.
And and I asked him if he watched the show Supernatural, because he was telling me about episodes in Supernatural, and I'm like, have you seen Supernatural? No, I've never heard of that. I don't watch TV. I'm like, oh my God.
the hallmark of see, there's not a countervailing. Jesus, it's such a conundrum. If you're a professional, there's checks and balances. If you're on the alternative side, there's none. So, my giant book isn't going to get peer reviewed. You know what I mean? It's like it's the nature of the beast. So there are so many freaks out there, and they become immersed in a paranoid world. It attracts a lot of people with mental illness, and you got to be on guard. It really does. And
the unstable ones that want to create their own realities.
Yes, no, and they just want to take bits and pieces and kind of meld this victim reality where they're out to get you, they're covering up the truth, the government's, instead of like taking responsibility for what they do in life and like whatever, it's being gainfully employed or becoming properly educated or whatever. It's like, I'm going to sit back and cry about being a victim. It's like
it's Obama's fault.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's Obama's fault or some shit, or it doesn't even matter if it's Republican or Democrat. It's a victim mindset where people don't take personal responsibility. So it's this kind of fascinating psychological world. And I'll say anybody who is a serial Facebook poster is teetering on severe mental illness. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Like these freaking people.
Well, I'm guilty
of
that. I love Facebook.
No,
I might have to check my temperature.
You get into your trolling sometimes.
I do.
That's
I'm
different
horrible.
than making your own reality up and creating your own damn cult.
Yeah, true.
Right?
Yeah.
Like every lunatic has a form now. What it is, it's an insidious device, and the iPhone too. It's a hit device. Like all those red icons, like the notification, the message, the friend request. It's all it's like chicks, changing the profile picture and showing everything off, and having all these creepy guys tell them how beautiful they are, or some guy, this girl, I'm going to troll her page, or like, she just messaged me, I got a hit out of it. It's all like dopamine, like hits. It's this, you know what I'm saying? It's like this sick it's not. That's why I killed it off. I was like so disgusted with humanity. So
yeah,
that's my fucking Facebook rant. I hate it.
Yep. All right.
Yeah, but
well,
okay.
guys, it was great having you on. We gotta play a word from our sponsor and close down, sir.
Thank you very much, Jim, again for being on. Oh, most definitely. Once you find out some more stuff, let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I hope to be filming this coming up spring and summer, and hope everything comes together. And if we can reconvene at some point. Hopefully later in the year after something good happens on the big screen. We'll see.
Either way,
awesome.
That's great. You're awesome.
Thanks for
being on the show. So.
I was saying that all that shit I was just saying, that's not going to be in the air, I hope.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we're small time. Yeah, there's not going to be a Fox News episode about Jim Vieira talking.
We're usually much more vulgar than this anyway.
Yeah.
We've only dropped 2 F-bombs this whole show. And one of them
that's
huge.
amazing.
That's fine with me, though.
This is a record for us.
Nice.
Usually I say fuck word at least 12 times.
Yeah.
You guys have a good night, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
All right,
have a good one, James.
Been great.
All right. Take care, you guys.